The transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Kepler 442c. Sergeant Hana Kim gripped her rifle tighter and looked at her 4 soldiers. They were young. Too young for this kind of mission. But the war needed bodies, and bodies were what they got. "Listen up," Hana said as the ship descended through the orange clouds. "This planet is supposed to be empty. No life forms detected. We go in, set up base camp, and wait for the mining crew. Simple job." Private Do-hyun Park checked his communication equipment one more time. At 22, he was the youngest of the group. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted the radio settings. "Sergeant, what if the scans were wrong? What if something is down there?" Hana studied the boy's face. She had been his age once, full of questions and fears. That was before she lost 3 platoons to alien attacks on different worlds. Now she was 28 and felt like she had lived 100 years. "The scans don't lie, Do-hyun. This rock is dead. Has been for thousands of years." Private Soo-jin Lee laughed as she cleaned her heavy plasma cannon. "Good. I could use a boring mission for once." She was 26 and built like a tank. Her last mission had been on Proxima Station, where spider-like aliens had tried to eat her face off. She still had the scars. Private Tae-ho Choi was reading data files on his tablet. As the team medic and xenobiologist, he always studied every planet before landing. "The geological reports are strange," he said quietly. "This planet should have some form of life. The atmosphere is perfect, the temperature is right, but the bioscanners show nothing. Maybe something killed everything," suggested Private Jinwoo Nam from the corner. He was 25 and served as their scout and explosives expert. His dark eyes always seemed to be looking for danger. Plague, asteroid impact, solar flare, could be anything. The ship's pilot announced their descent. "Landing in 5 minutes. Weather is clear. Temperature is 22 degrees Celsius. Wind, speed is minimal." Hana stood up and checked her gear one final time. She carried a standard pulse rifle, 3 grenades, a combat knife, and enough supplies for 2 weeks. Her soldiers were similarly equipped. It should be more than enough for a simple scouting mission. The ship landed with a gentle thud. The cargo bay doors opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Hot, dry air rushed in, carrying the smell of dust and something else. Something old. Hana stepped out first, her rifle ready. The landscape stretched out before them like a painting of hell. Red sand dunes rolled toward the horizon. Black rock formations jutted up from the desert floor like broken teeth. The sky was a pale orange color that made everything look like it was on fire. "Beautiful," Do-hyun said sarcastically as he set up his communication array. "Looks dead too." "Me," Soo-jin replied, scanning the area with her weapons targeting system. Tae-ho knelt down and scooped up a handful of sand. He let it run through his fingers while examining the grains. "This sand is unusual. It has traces of organic compounds. Something lived here once." Keyword being once, Hana said. "Spread out. Perimeter sweep. Stay within visual range." The soldiers moved out in a practiced formation. Hana had trained them well over the past 6 months. They knew how to work together, how to watch each other's backs. She just hoped it would be enough if something went wrong. Jinwoo moved like a ghost across the sand, his scout training evident in every step. He found something interesting near a cluster of rocks about 50 meters from the landing site. "Sergeant, you need to see this." Hana jogged over to where Jinwoo was crouched. In the sand were marks that looked almost like tracks. They were large, about the size of dinner plates, and had a strange pattern. 3 curved lines with what looked like claw marks at the ends. "These are fresh," Jinwoo said, pointing to the crisp edges of the impressions. "Made within the last day or 2. Could be from our ship landing," Hana suggested, but she didn't believe it herself. The marks were too organized, too purposeful. Tae-ho arrived and examined the tracks with his scientific equipment. His scanner beeped as it analyzed the impressions. "These weren't made by our ship. The depth and spacing suggest something heavy. Very heavy. And the pattern indicates intelligence. These aren't random marks." "How heavy?" Hana asked. "Based on the depth and the sand density, I'd estimate at least 2 tons, maybe more." Sujin hefted her plasma cannon. 2 tons of what exactly? I don't know, Taeho admitted. But whatever made these tracks was moving with purpose. Look at the spacing, it's too regular to be natural. Do-hyun's radio crackled to life. Sergeant, I'm picking up some weird energy readings from the north, about 2 kilometers from here. Ha-na. Looked toward the north where a range of jagged mountains rose from the desert floor. The peaks were sharp and twisted, like the spine of some enormous buried creature. What kind of energy? I'm not sure. It's not mechanical. More like biological, but really faint. Could be equipment malfunction, Jinwoo suggested. Could be. Hana agreed. But her instincts told her otherwise. After losing so many soldiers on other worlds, she had learned to trust her gut feelings. And right now, her gut was telling her they were not alone. We stick to the mission? She decided. Set up base camp in those rocks over there. Good sight lines, defensible position. Do-hyun, keep monitoring those energy readings. Everyone else, stay alert. They spent the next 2 hours establishing their camp. They set up their shelter in a natural depression between 3 large boulders. The rocks would provide cover from the wind and any potential threats. Do-hyun positioned his communication equipment on the highest rock to get the best signal range. As the orange sun began to set, the temperature dropped quickly. The desert became cold and quiet. Too quiet. Hana had been on many worlds, and most had some kind of ambient noise. Wind through vegetation, insects calling, small animals moving about. But this planet was silent except for the soft whisper of sand blowing across stone. It's like a tomb out here, Do-hyun whispered as he monitored the radio frequencies. Don't say things like that, Sujin warned. You'll jinx us. Taeho was studying his readings from the day's exploration. I found something else interesting. These rock formations aren't natural. The mineral composition suggests they were shaped by intelligence. Carved, perhaps. Carved by what? Hana asked. That's the question, isn't it? As night fell completely, strange shadows began to move across the mountainsides. They could have been clouds, but there were no clouds in the clear sky. They could have been tricks of the light, but there was no light to create tricks. Hana assigned watch schedules and tried to get some sleep. But every time she closed her eyes, she thought about those tracks in the sand. Something big had made them. Something that was still out there in the darkness. High above their camp, perched on a rocky ledge, pale eyes watched the small figures moving around their glowing fire. The watcher had been alone for so long that it had almost forgotten what other living beings looked like. These creatures were strange, small and soft, not like the ones from the old memories. But they were alive. And after millennia of solitude, that was enough to stir something deep in the watcher's ancient heart. Something that had been sleeping for far too long. The hunt would begin tomorrow. Morning came with a blood-red sunrise that painted the desert the color of rust. Hana woke to the sound of Do-hyun's equipment beeping frantically. The young communications specialist was hunched over his scanner, his face pale with worry. Sergeant, those energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever is out there, it's moving closer. Hana grabbed her rifle and checked the charge. How close? Maybe a kilometer. The readings are strange, though. They pulse like a heartbeat. Sujin was already awake, cleaning her plasma cannon with practiced efficiency. Could be some kind of machine. Ancient defense system, maybe. Or something alive, Taeho suggested as he packed his medical supplies. The readings match biological patterns I've seen before. Neural activity, circulatory systems, that sort of thing. Jinwoo emerged from behind the rocks where he had been on watch. His face was grim. We've got bigger problems. Those tracks from yesterday? There are fresh ones all around our camp. Something circled us while we slept. Hana felt ice form in her stomach. Show me. Jinwoo led them to the perimeter of their camp. In the soft sand were dozens of the same 3-clawed tracks they had found the day before. The creature had moved around their position multiple times, sometimes coming within 10 meters of their shelter. It was watching us, Taeho said quietly. Look at the pattern. It stopped here for a long time. He pointed to a cluster of deep impressions. Then moved to get a different angle. It was studying us. Why didn't it attack? Do-hyun asked, his voice shaking slightly. Maybe it's not hostile, Hana said, though she kept her rifle ready. Or maybe it's waiting for something. We should call for pickup, Sujin suggested. This is supposed to be a dead planet. Command needs to know there's something here. Hana considered this. Protocol said to report any unexpected life forms immediately. But she also knew that calling for pickup would mean admitting failure. Her record couldn't take another failed mission. We investigate first, she decided. We're soldiers, not tourists. Do-hyun, try to get a better fix on those energy readings. Everyone else, gear up. We're going hunting. They moved out in tactical formation, following the energy signatures, toward the northern mountains. The landscape was even more desolate in daylight. Nothing grew here. No insects buzzed. No birds flew overhead. Just endless red sand and black stone. After an hour of walking, Jin-woo held up his hand for them to stop. Cave entrance ahead, about 50 meters. Hana pulled out her binoculars and studied the opening in the mountainside. It was large, maybe 4 meters high and 6 meters wide. Too perfectly round to be natural. That's not a cave, Taeho said, looking through his own scope. It's a tunnel. See how smooth the walls are? Something carved this. Do-hyun's scanner was going crazy. The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever we're looking for, it's in there. They approached the tunnel entrance carefully. Hana went first, her rifle raised. The walls were indeed smooth, covered with what looked like scratch marks. But as they got closer, Taeho realized they weren't random scratches. These are symbols, some kind of writing. The tunnel stretched back into darkness. Their helmet lights revealed more symbols covering every surface. Pictures of flying creatures with long necks and 6 limbs, smaller figures that might have been people, scenes that looked like the larger creatures protecting the smaller ones. It's a story, Taeho whispered. The pictures tell a story. They moved deeper into the tunnel. The air was warm and humid, completely different from the dry desert outside. Something was generating heat down here. Something big. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber carved from solid rock. Their lights couldn't reach the ceiling. Ancient murals covered the walls showing the same flying creatures in various scenes. But these pictures were different. They showed the creatures growing old, dying until only one remained. This is a tomb, Do-hyun breathed. No, Taeho corrected, studying the murals more carefully. It's a nursery. Look at these images. The creatures are caring for eggs, lots of eggs. A sound echoed from the depths of the chamber, low and mournful, like the call of some enormous whale. The soldiers froze, their weapons ready. That came from below, Jin-woo whispered. They followed a spiral path down into the chamber. The murals became more detailed as they descended. The flying creatures had pale scales that gleamed like pearls. Their eyes were large and intelligent. In every picture, they were protecting something smaller and weaker. The sound came again, closer this time. It was definitely alive. Definitely huge. Maybe we should go back, Do-hyun suggested. No, Hana said firmly. We need to know what we're dealing with. At the bottom of the chamber was a pool of water, crystal clear and perfectly still. The water glowed with its own light, casting strange shadows on the walls, and rising from the center of the pool was something that made them all gasp. It was one of the creatures from the murals, alive, real, and bigger than any of the pictures had suggested. The creature was easily 8 meters long with a serpentine neck and powerful limbs. Its scales were pure white, almost transparent, and seemed to glow from within. 6 limbs ended in hands that looked almost human, but with 3 fingers and sharp claws. Wings folded against its back were large enough to carry its massive body through the air. But it was the eyes that caught Hana's attention. They were blue, bright blue, and filled with an intelligence that was unmistakably aware. This was not some mindless beast. This was a person trapped in a very alien body. The creature looked at them for a long moment. Then it made a sound that was almost like speech. Not human speech, but definitely communication. It was trying to talk to them. Teho stepped forward slowly, his hands raised to show he was unarmed. "Hello?" he said softly. The creature tilted, its massive head studying him. Then it made another sound, different from the first. It sounded almost like a question. "I think it understands," Teho whispered. The creature moved closer, its movements careful and deliberate. It was trying not to frighten them. But as it rose to its full height, Hana realized how incredibly dangerous it was. Those claws could tear through their armor like paper. Those jaws could bite a person in half. Suddenly, the creature's demeanor changed. Its eyes widened and it made a sharp sound that was clearly distressed. It was looking at something behind them. Hana spun around to see more energy readings on Do-hyun's scanner. But these were different. Mechanical. Hostile. "Incoming ships," Do-hyun announced. "Multiple contacts, they're not human." The creature let out a roar that shook the entire chamber. It wasn't angry at the humans, it was angry at whoever was coming. And from the way it positioned itself between the soldiers and the tunnel entrance, it was ready to protect them. "I think we just made a friend," Jinwoo said quietly. "Let's hope so," Hana replied, checking her weapon. "Because I think we're about to need all the friends we can get." The alien ships landed outside the cave with a thunderous roar that echoed through the tunnels. Hana could hear the sound of energy weapons charging and heavy footsteps on stone. Whoever had found them was not interested in talking. The white creature, which Teho had started calling Beck because of its pale coloration, moved with surprising grace despite its size. It positioned itself at the tunnel entrance, blocking the path to the chamber where the humans sheltered. "What are those ships?" Do-hyun asked, frantically working his scanner. "Vanari raiders," Hana said grimly, recognizing the energy signatures. "They're slavers and pirates. They strip mine planets and kill anyone who gets in their way." "How did they find us?" Sujin demanded, powering up her plasma cannon. "Doesn't matter now," Hana replied. "What matters is staying alive." Beck turned toward them and made a series of complex sounds. The vocalizations were clearly language, but unlike anything in their translation databases. Teho stepped forward, pulling out his tablet computer. "I'm going to try something," he said. He pulled up images on the screen, starting with simple concepts. A picture of a human figure, then pointing to himself. A picture of water, then pointing to the glowing pool. Beck watched with obvious interest. When Teho showed a picture of a spaceship and pointed upward, Beck made an agitated sound and gestured toward the tunnel entrance. "It understands," Teho said excitedly. "It knows about the raiders." The sound of weapons fire echoed from outside. Energy blasts and the distinctive whine of Vanari plasma rifles. Beck's head swung toward the sound, and it made a low growling noise deep in its throat. Teho quickly cycled through more images. Pictures of fighting, of people running, of weapons. Each time, Beck responded with sounds that seemed to match the emotional content of the images. Then Teho showed an image of protection, an adult shielding a child. Beck's reaction was immediate and powerful. It made a sound that was almost like singing, rich and complex and beautiful. "That means something important," Teho said. "Protection, guardianship. It's trying to tell us something." Beck moved to the wall where the ancient murals were carved. It touched one of the images with a clawed finger, the same protective scene that Teho had shown on his tablet. Then it pointed to itself and made the singing sound. Again. "You were a guardian," Teho said, understanding flooding his voice. "You protected someone." Beck nodded, a distinctly human gesture that surprised them all. It moved to another mural, this one showing the flying creatures tending to what looked like a nursery full of smaller beings. Not eggs, Hana realized, but actual living creatures. Different species all being cared for by the pale dragons. They were like parents, Do-hyun said wonderingly, but not to their own children, to other species. Beck sang again, but this time the sound was sad, lonely. It touched another mural that showed most of the dragons lying still and lifeless. A great catastrophe had struck this world. killing almost everything. Only one dragon remained, watching over empty chambers where its charges had once lived. "You've been alone," Hana said softly. "For how long?" Beck moved to a section of the wall that showed star patterns. Teho compared them to his astronomical database and went pale. "These constellations are from thousands of years ago. Maybe tens of thousands. It's been alone for longer than human civilization has existed." The sound of fighting was getting closer. Heavy footsteps in the tunnel above. The Vanari were searching the cave system, and it wouldn't take them long to find the chamber. Beck made a decision. It moved toward the tunnel entrance but paused to look back at the humans. The expression on its alien features was unmistakable. It was asking permission to protect them. "We should help it fight," Sujin said, raising her weapon. "No," Hana said firmly. "We don't know what it's capable of. We could get in its way." Beck seemed to understand. It made a gentle sound and gestured for them to stay back. Then it began to change. The pale scales along its neck and spine began to glow brighter. Not just reflecting light, but generating it. The glow spread across its entire body until it looked like a living constellation. Its eyes blazed with blue fire. "Bioluminescent combat mode," Teho breathed. "It's preparing for battle." The first Vanari soldiers appeared at the tunnel entrance. They were tall, insectoid creatures with 4 arms and compound eyes. Their armor was black and scarred from countless battles. They carried energy weapons that could punch through tank armor. They saw Beck and opened fire immediately. The dragon moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. It flowed like liquid mercury, avoiding the energy blasts while closing the distance to its enemies. The first Vanari never had time to scream. Beck's claws went through the aliens, armor like it was made of paper. Its jaws crushed another raider's weapon and the arm holding it. The third Vanari managed to get off one shot before Beck's tail whipped around and sent it flying into the stone wall. But more were coming. Many more. "There's got to be 30 of them," Jinwoo reported, watching the scanner readings. Beck fought, like something out of legend. It used its size and strength but also its intelligence. It brought down sections of the tunnel ceiling to block passages. It used its bioluminescence to blind enemies before striking. It fought with the skill of something that had been a warrior for millennia, but even legends could bleed. A Vanari with a heavy plasma cannon managed to hit Beck in the shoulder. The dragon roared in pain and stumbled. Another blast caught it, in the side, burning through scales and into flesh. "It's hurt," Do-hyun said. "It's losing," Hana corrected grimly. More Vanari poured into the chamber. They had realized that their prey was dangerous, and they were bringing overwhelming firepower to bear. Beck was strong and fast and clever, but it was still just one creature against an army. The dragon fell back toward the pool where the humans were sheltered. It was breathing hard, blue blood streaming from multiple wounds, but it still placed itself between the raiders and the people it had chosen to protect. One of the Vanari shouted something in their clicking language. Hana didn't need a translator to understand the meaning. Surrender or die. Beck's response was to rear up to its full height and roar defiance. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. It was the voice of something that had never surrendered and never would. "We have to help," Teho said, grabbing his medical kit. "With what?" Sujin demanded. "Our weapons can't even scratch their armor." "Then we make sure its sacrifice means something," Hana said quietly. "Do-hyun, can you get a message out?" "Maybe. If I can boost the signal through the cave system." "Do it. Tell command what we found here. Tell them about Bayek. Tell them this world isn't empty." As Do-hyun worked frantically with his equipment, Tai-ho approached the wounded dragon. Bayek looked down at him with those intelligent blue eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding, respect. The bond between protector and protected. Tai-ho opened his medical kit and began treating the dragon's wounds as best he could. Bayek made a soft sound of gratitude and gently touched the human's shoulder with one clawed finger. The touch was gentle, careful, the touch of something that knew how fragile smaller beings could be. The touch of a parent. The Venari regrouped at the tunnel entrance, their clicking voices echoing through the chamber as they planned their assault. Hana counted at least 20 of them, all armed with military-grade weapons. Her small team had maybe enough ammunition for a brief firefight, but against those numbers they wouldn't last 5 minutes. Beck crouched low, trying to make itself a smaller target while Taiho worked on its wounds. The young medic had never treated an alien before, but injuries were injuries. He cleaned the plasma burns and applied synthetic skin patches where he could. "This is crazy," he muttered as he worked. "I'm giving first aid to a dragon." Beck made a sound that might have been laughter. Despite everything, it seemed amused by the situation. Do-hyun looked up from his communication equipment. "I got a message out, but the response isn't good. The nearest human ship is 3 days away. We're on our own." "What about the mining crew that was supposed to follow us?" Jinwoo asked. "Delayed. Some kind of bureaucratic mess with their permits." Sujin checked her plasma cannon's power cell. "So we hold this position for 3 days against 30 raiders. No problem." Hana studied the chamber, looking for tactical advantages. The pool in the center could provide some cover. The spiral pathway up to the tunnel entrance created a natural bottleneck. The ancient murals might confuse targeting systems. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Beck," she said, getting the dragon's attention. "Can you understand me?" The creature nodded, that strangely human gesture that still surprised her. "We need to work together. You know this place better than we do. Are there other ways in or out?" Beck considered this, then moved to one of the murals. It touched a section that showed a complex network of tunnels and chambers. This cave system was much larger than they had realized. "Multiple entrances," Teho translated. The Venari could come from anywhere. But Beck wasn't finished. It moved to another mural that showed the dragons using the tunnels for something specific. Not hiding, but hunting. The pale creatures had been ambush predators, using their knowledge of the cave system to strike enemies from unexpected directions. "You want to take the fight to them?" Hana realized. Beck sang its agreement, the sound echoing through the chamber with deadly promise. "It's suicide," Do-hyun protested. "There are too many of them." "Not if we're smart about it," Hana said, her tactical mind already working on the problem. "Beck knows every tunnel in this mountain. We can hit them where they don't expect it, then disappear before they can retaliate." "Guerrilla warfare," Jinwoo said, understanding. "But we're not guerrillas. We're regular infantry." "Then we learn fast." Beck moved to the pool and made a complex gesture. The water began to glow brighter, and suddenly the chamber was filled with holographic images, 3-dimensional maps of the entire cave system, showing dozens of interconnected tunnels and chambers. "How is it doing that?" Do-hyun asked in amazement. "The pool is some kind of computer," Teho guessed. "Biological technology. The dragons built this whole complex as a command center." The holographic map showed the current positions of the Venari forces. They had split into 3 groups planning to attack the chamber from multiple directions. But the map also showed hidden passages that could let the defenders move unseen. "We split up," Hana decided. "Hit them one group at a time before they can coordinate. Bayek, can you take the main tunnel?" The dragon nodded and moved toward the primary entrance, but it paused and looked back at the humans with an expression of concern. "It doesn't want to leave us unprotected," Taiho observed. "We'll be fine," Hana assured the creature. "This is what we're trained for." Beck made a sound that might have been doubt, but it moved toward its assigned position anyway. The first attack came from the eastern tunnel. 5 Venari moving in standard formation, their weapons ready. They expected to find the humans huddled around the pool, easy targets. Instead, they found Jinwoo waiting in a side passage with his explosive charges. The blast brought down half the tunnel ceiling, crushing 3 of the raiders instantly. The remaining 2 stumbled out of the smoke, disoriented and half-blind. Sujin was waiting for them with her plasma cannon. 2 down, she reported over the radio. The second group tried to come through a narrow passage on the western side. They moved cautiously, having heard the explosion from the east. Do-hyun was positioned there with his scanning equipment, able to track their movements through the rock. 3 contacts, moving slow. They'll reach your position in 30 seconds, he reported to Hana. Hana waited in perfect silence as the Vanari crept through the darkness. When the first one passed her hiding spot, she struck with her combat knife. The blade found the gap between helmet and armor, and the raider fell without a sound. The other 2 realized they were under attack and opened fire, but Hana was already moving. She used the narrow confines of the tunnel to her advantage, forcing them to fight her, one at a time. Her training took over, muscle memory from 100 combat simulations. The second Vanari fell to a grenade. The third tried to retreat but ran into Tai Ho, who had positioned himself as backup. The medic might not be a frontline fighter, but he knew enough to handle one confused enemy. Meanwhile, Beck was dealing with the main force in the primary tunnel. The dragon had turned the entire passage into a death trap, using its bioluminescence to create false targets and confuse enemy targeting systems. The Vanari fired at glowing patches on the walls while the real threat struck from above and behind. But there were still too many of them, and they were learning. The Vanari commander, a scarred veteran with one missing arm, recognized what was happening. Instead of continuing the tunnel assault, he pulled his forces back and regrouped. When they attacked again, it was with a different strategy. They brought up heavy weapons, plasma artillery that could melt through solid rock. They began systematically destroying the cave system, collapsing tunnels and sealing passages. They're bringing the whole mountain down, Do-hyun reported as dust and debris rained from the ceiling. Then we finish this now, Hana replied. Everyone back to the main chamber. We make our stand there. The humans regrouped around the glowing pool, while Beck took position at the tunnel entrance. The dragon was wounded and exhausted, but its eyes still burned with determination. The Vanari commander appeared at the tunnel mouth, flanked by his remaining soldiers. Maybe 15 of them left, but they had the heavy weapons now. The plasma artillery would tear through any defense the humans could mount. The commander spoke in accented standard English. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist and we will make them last for days. Counteroffer, Hana called back. Leave now, and we'll let you live. The commander laughed, a harsh clicking sound. You are beaten, human. Your pet dragon is dying. Your position is surrounded. What could you possibly do to threaten us? Hana looked at Beck, and the dragon looked back at her. In that moment, she understood what the creature intended to do, what it had always been prepared to do. Beck, no, she said quietly. But the dragon had already made its choice. It had been alone for thousands of years, watching over empty chambers, where its charges once lived. Now it had found new purpose, new lives to protect. It would not fail them as it had failed the others. Beck began to glow brighter than ever before. Not just its scales, but its entire body. The light was beautiful and terrible, and Hana realized what she was seeing. The dragon wasn't just preparing to fight, it was preparing to die, and when it died, it was going to take as many enemies with it as possible. Everyone get behind the pool, she ordered. Now. The final battle was about to begin. The light from Bayek's body grew brighter until it hurt to look at directly. The dragon's scales had become like stars, each one burning with its own inner fire. The ancient chamber filled with a radiance that turned shadows into blazing white. Emptiness. What's happening to it? Do-hyun asked, shielding his eyes. It's overloading its bioluminescence systems, Taeho said, his voice filled with awe and terror. I think it's converting its life force into energy. The Vanari commander recognized the threat immediately. He barked orders in his clicking language, and his soldiers raised their weapons. But Beck was already moving. The dragon flowed up the spiral pathway like liquid fire, its massive form moving with impossible grace. The first wave of plasma bolts passed harmlessly through spaces where it had been a split second before. Beck struck the leading Vanari soldiers with the force of a falling star. But this wasn't the calculated tactical fighting they had seen before. This was desperate fury. Beck fought with the rage of something that had lost everything it ever cared about and refused to lose anything else. 3 Venari fell to its claws in the first seconds. 2 more were crushed by its tail, but the heavy weapons were already powering up, and plasma artillery could hurt even a dragon burning with its own life force. "We have to help," Sujin said, raising her cannon. "No," Hana ordered. "Stay back. This is its fight now." But even as she said it, she knew Beck couldn't win alone. There were still too many enemies, and the dragon was burning itself up from the inside. Each brilliant flash of its scales was life force consumed, never to be recovered. A plasma artillery shell struck Beck in the chest, burning through scales and flesh. The dragon stumbled but kept fighting. Another shell hit its left wing, tearing through the delicate membrane. Blue blood, glowing like liquid sapphires, splattered the walls. The Venari commander moved up behind his soldiers, his own weapon trained on the wounded dragon. He was a veteran of 100 battles, and he knew how to kill dangerous prey. Wait for it to weaken, then strike at the vital organs. Beck reared up for another attack, but its movements were slower now. The brilliant glow was starting to fade. The dragon was dying, and everyone in the chamber could see it. That was when Taeho did something incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. The young medic broke from cover and ran toward the battle, his first aid kit in one hand and a plasma grenade in the other. "Hey, ugly," he shouted at the Venari commander. "Pick on someone your own size." The commander turned toward this new threat, raising his weapon. But Taeho was already throwing the grenade, not at the commander but at the ceiling above him. The explosion brought down a section of the tunnel roof, crushing 2 Venari and separating the commander from his remaining soldiers. Now, it was just the scarred veteran against a dragon and a human medic. The commander fired at Taeho, but Beck moved with the last of its strength to intercept the shot. The plasma bolt meant for the human struck the dragon instead, burning deep into its side. Beck collapsed, its glow fading to a dim flicker, but with its last conscious act, it reached out with one massive claw and pinned the Venari commander against the wall. The battle was over. The remaining Venari soldiers, seeing their leader captured and their position hopeless, threw down their weapons and fled back through the tunnels. Hana and her team rushed to where Bayek lay dying beside the glowing pool. The dragon's breath came in short, painful gasps. Its scales had lost their brilliant light and faded to the color of old bone. "Can we save it?" Do-hyun asked desperately. Taeho was already working, applying every medical technique he knew. But the dragon's injuries were too severe, and its alien biology was too different from anything he had studied. "I don't know how," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I don't know how to help it." Beck's great head turned toward Hana. Those intelligent blue eyes were dimming, but they still held awareness. The dragon was trying to say something. It raised one claw and gently touched Hana's face. The gesture was impossibly tender, like a parent comforting a frightened child. Then it spoke. The words were a mixture of its own ancient language and broken Korean it had somehow learned from listening to the humans. But the meaning was clear. "Mother," Beck whispered. "Safe. Mother, safe." Hana felt her heart break. This ancient creature, alone for millennia, had found something worth dying for in a handful of strangers. It had chosen to see them not as aliens or enemies, but as the children it had always been meant to protect. "Yes," she whispered back, taking the dragon's massive claw in her small human hands. "Mother is safe. You protected us. You did good." Beck's eyes closed and a sound came from its throat. Not the roar of a predator or the cry of pain, but something else. Something beautiful. It was singing, a lullaby in a language older than human civilization, meant to comfort the young and ease them into sleep. The song that dragons had sung to their charges in the time before the Great Dying. The song that had echoed through empty chambers for thousands of lonely years. Taeho recognized the melody from the murals, the pattern that had been carved in stone when this world was young. He began to hum along, adding his human voice to the ancient dragon's final song. One by one, the others joined in. Do-hyun, Sujin, Jinwoo, and finally Hana herself. They couldn't understand the words, but they understood the meaning. Love, protection, the promise that someone would remember. Beck's song grew softer and softer until it was barely a whisper. Then it stopped, and the great dragon was still. The chamber fell silent except for the gentle sound of water lapping at the edges of the pool. The humans sat with their dead protector as the glow from the pool slowly faded, returning the ancient nursery to darkness. 3 days later, a human fleet arrived to find 5 soldiers and 1 dead dragon in a cave that shouldn't have existed, on a planet that was supposed to be empty. Hana's report would change everything. Kepler 442c became a protected world, off-limits to mining or colonization. Scientists came to study the dragon's remains and the incredible technology built into the cave system. But most importantly, deep beneath the mountain, they found what Bayek had been protecting all those years. Thousands of crystalline chambers, each one containing a life form in perfect stasis. Not dragons, but dozens of different species. The ancient guardians had saved them from whatever catastrophe had destroyed this world, keeping them safe until conditions were right for their return. Hana requested and received permission to oversee the awakening process. She would spend the rest of her life on Kepler 442c, ensuring that Bayek's final charges would have someone to protect them when they emerged from their long sleep. On quiet nights, when the wind blew through the chambers, she would sometimes hear echoes of that ancient lullaby, the song of dragons, keeping watch over dreams of tomorrow. The song a mother sang to her children, promising them that they were safe.